Hey guys, I'm Matt Mulholland. Thank you for joining me for a special edition of Listen to This Bull Live. We are broadcasting at a very unusual time, mostly because there was a major storm and we need to get as much information out as possible to help policyholders inside Louisiana and anywhere else that has been affected so far. So I have Morgan Walker with the American Policyholder Association sitting in the wings. I'm going to bring her in and we can start talking about some resources that are available to policyholders nationwide, but especially to the victims of Hurricane Ida. So here we go. Hey Morgan, how you doing?
Hi Matt, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yes.
This is definitely not normal for us to have a special edition like this out of the blue, which is, my best excuse for having a beer suddenly. So I'm okay with it. So you guys, let me get this thing out of here. Got off the phone with you a second ago. You guys have some fun resources that have just become available to policyholders to help themselves against insurance carrier fraud. Is that right?
Yes. Well, all too often in our industry, our policyholders and people that this video will reach, both in the professional side of things and the policyholder consumer side of things, insurer fraud is not talked about nearly enough. And so we've come out with a few resources which we will attach to this video in some form or another that people can click on and download these documents to further educate their policyholders and make sure that they know what they're up against as far as insurer fraud, and first and foremost starting the conversation and balancing the narrative that yes, insurance fraud happens across the board, but carrier side fraud is not talked about nearly enough.
So you guys, you say insurer fraud and you say carrier fraud. You mean the same thing, but if you say insurer fraud, sometimes it's hard to understand if you're saying insurer fraud or insured fraud.
Yes.
Maybe we should just stick to the carrier fraud.
Perfect. Carrier side fraud.
Carrier side fraud.
Carrier
This
side
is
fraud.
Fraud committed by the insurance carriers against the policyholder.
Yes, sir.
This is something that a lot of states have had a hard time understanding that this even exists, but it happens all the time. Most public adjusters and attorneys would agree that it happens a lot more than we even know, and it's unfortunately it's almost becoming a commonplace issue. Though proving that it's fraud has been the biggest problem. So we've got, I've got a few questions I want to ask along those lines, but let's really open up what the resources are first and see where that leads us. So far you've got a document that teaches you how to avoid insurance fraud after a natural disaster specifically. Is there anything in there that you think is something we should talk about directly on today's podcast?
Well, I'm happy that you asked that, because considering the recent events of Ida and how many people have been affected both professionally and privately, a lot of consumers are not educated on the claims process, how to go about it, how to best protect themselves and educate themselves moving forward. So yes, there is a couple key elements of that particular document that I would love to touch on. And mainly, it all comes back to educating yourself as a policyholder. At the end of the day, you do have responsibility on the claims side and how it's executed. You have a lot of responsibility. So first and foremost, stay educated, know the time frame, ask questions, stay organized, especially in disaster zones. You've just lost your home, you're displaced, you're somewhere else. You need to make sure all your files and all your documents that you have to help substantiate your policy are backed up somewhere on a digital form or somewhere that they cannot be destroyed or damaged.
This is something they'd obviously do before the storm, not after at this point.
Correct. But best prepare yourself. But a lot of policyholders don't even know about how the claims process works. So just knowing that beforehand to best prepare for it, document everything. You need to have time stamped everything you need to be able to combat any kind of excuse or rebuttal from your insurance carrier that might not be factual.
If I'm a policyholder and someone said that to me, just said you need to back up everything that you have all your rebuttals in line, but they have no idea what they're even going to have to rebut. Is that a word?
Rebut, yeah, sure.
I would assume so. It sounds funny though. Anyway, so anything that you might have to rebut, how do they know what kind of things to be looking out for? What should they be really documenting specifically?
Everything. So they should have on hand a copy of their policy, of course. We're coming out with resources that educate homeowners on how to read policies or how to read claims and reports on all fronts, but also they need to have pictures beforehand, of course, but know what they're getting into. And all too often across the board, there's many states that all case law completely defines insurance fraud strictly from the contractor, even the homeowner side. There's no case law that even talks about from the carrier side. So that's a huge issue. These billion-dollar corporations throw tons of money, marketing, and all sorts of other strategies to make sure nobody talks about carrier side fraud. So first and foremost, it's balancing the narrative, and it's up to us. The American Policyholders Association is the only organization out there that is lobbying on behalf and protection of the consumer. Every single other lobbyist effort represents the carrier. That's a huge issue. That's why policyholders are not educated.
Well, that's very interesting. The resources that we're talking about, they're PDF documents that are on the website that I posted a link to in the comments below from the video that you guys are watching live. But in those resources on those pages, there is quite a bit of information there. There's a lot that is being asked to be done. Having digital copies of everything is a good idea, just because you don't know if your house is even going to be there. I mean, the houses that in Louisiana, they're devastated. There's water everywhere. But how would it not? I don't think it just needs to be digital. If the computers get wet and they get getting fried, I think you need to have some of this stuff backed up to the cloud. I think that's probably a good move for a lot of this.
Absolutely.
That's a good question. Frank Dalton asked if the APA is free for policyholders.
Yes. Every single policyholder, if you have a policy on your home, you can go to apassociation.org and sign up for free. You will find these resources. We are constantly developing more content and resources to educate professionals in our industry and first and foremost policyholders. So these documents that you're seeing, I'm not sure which one you put up, but this is just the start of many to come.
Yeah, I'm going to actually post the individual documents, both of them, on here as well, for the heck of it, so people can take a look at those at their leisure without having to try to find it. So policyholders can become American Policyholder members for free.
Yes. It's called an associate.
I happen to be a policyholder.
Yeah.
Can I have a membership for free too?
Well, it's different than the professional membership, which you have. You have a whole lot more resources that you can take advantage of on the back end. So this is definitely just an educational resource for homeowners and policyholders, and it's addressing the question that you just spoke about of balancing the narrative. Like, they just don't know. They don't know how to prepare. They don't know what to do because there's nobody out there telling them that this happens widespread all the time.
I think that subconsciously most people recognize that their insurance company is probably not in line with their best interests. But they're being told over and over and over and over and over again on television and over radio that their insurance company is their friend, their neighbor, their family even. So it's why do you think the insurance companies commit fraud against their own policyholders, their own customers?
At the end of the day, every single dollar that they pay out per policy is a dollar they lose. Insurance carriers are not billion-dollar corporations out of nowhere. It's a business. The more money
That's a solid point.
they can keep in their pockets and drive down the payout per each policy, the longer they draw it out, the more likely the homeowner just gives up and says, you know what, I'm done. Like, I'll just settle, which is what 98 to 99% of policyholders do. They just settle, they give up, they get discouraged. They don't have a lot of resources. Less than 1% of homeowners or property owners take legal action. And that is a staggering number.
I've heard that before. Would love to actually find the statistics wherever they're published about that kind of a thing. It's probably something that's collated. Do you guys actually have those statistics?
I do believe Doug does, yes.
No kidding. Actually, I would love to see that, and I'll have to talk to him about that. But I agree. I think that there's a bean counter somewhere. Really nerdy guy. He's got one of those green visor hats and a calculator that goes. And I think that he is determining that there are so many dollars in claims that is being saved by saying no up front, because a certain amount of people will just disappear. If I say no now, 5% of those people will drop off. And now I only have to deal with 95% that are left over. And now I can say no again, and a certain amount will drop off. And if I say no in different ways, then we'll have different things happen. And that bean counter, I'm going to call him... what should his name be? Stuart. His name is Stuart. Stuart the bean counter, with his green visor and his weird calculator, has determined that if they perform these specific actions, Matt, thanks, Frank. You're a wonderful person, Frank. I love how he spelled my name correctly for a change. You knocked me off track. That bean counter is telling the insurance companies that they will save money if they do these things, and the insurance companies are actually listening. They called it the McKinsey model for a minute. That had a lot to do with what had originally occurred with Allstate. You can read all about that kind of thing in the book, From Good Hands to Boxing Gloves. Mm-hmm. Does the APA go after engineering firms committing fraud?
That's how this whole thing started. It was actually in Hurricane Sandy that it was found, the original document and the document later, by chance, the homeowner actually ran into the original engineer and they were like, hey, they just denied my claim. And he happened to have the original copy on him. So from that instance, they were actually able to compare the two engineering reports and saw the alter. So they went and put not in front of significant damage. So the original report said there was significant damage found. The second altered in peer review, mind you, they just put the word not in it. So the later peer reviewed document, there was not any significant damage that was found. And so this happens. Unfortunately, we're seeing it happen more systematically, and not just insurance firms or engineering firms. But also all of the subcontractors and TPA firms that they hire and keep subbing out and keep subbing out and keep subbing out. It's just, sadly, we're seeing it more and more, and it's not just the engineering firms. But yes, that was how this all started. That was what birthed the APA, and absolutely, that's our main mission focus. Because if you cut the head off of the snake at the top, everybody starts paying attention. You can find on millions of dollars every year, which happens, and it changes absolutely nothing. But whenever you start threatening to put people in prison and actually doing it, they act a little bit different.
So Wesley asked if the engineering firm was the one committing fraud. Is it the engineering firm or is it the carrier that is changing the language?
Okay, give me just 1 second. I'm so sorry. Excuse me.
I asked for the wrong question. I don't know if she remembers that this was live.
My sincere apologies. I have a child that I could hear screaming. This is life these days, okay? It's 5 o'clock, 8:30 Central. This is real. This is raw. This is my life. So it is what it is. I've had my son come try to get my attention like 3 times. He was like, Mom! And I was like, okay. She like stubbed her toe. So all is well. But she was hysterical. I was like, and my husband is out in the hurricane relief efforts helping out, so I'm flying solo. So anyways, back to business. It is what it is. What's the next question?
I just want you to see these comments for a second.
Oh, okay. Beating her kids.
Oh yeah.
You scared something. I didn't even realize the comments were coming in right here until like 2 minutes ago.
Now you know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's part of the show is we like people to comment on this and ask questions. It absolutely helps.
Yes.
Because I come up with weird questions, and you don't want my questions all the time. What laws are we going to see changed soon to help policyholders?
So I get this question a lot. We do not have anything to do with changing laws. Our main mission focus is to criminally prosecute insurance carrier fraud onto policyholders. We do not have anything to do in law changing arena. Now, we are pulled in to speak to different bodies of legal authorities to be expert witnesses or to educate people in political realms to shed light on this huge issue and to advocate. But the APA and all of our resources, we do not put that into specifically trying to change laws. But the whole way this is organized is exactly how it started. Putting key players in handcuffs, sending them to prison, broadcasting it through main media outlets, setting a precedence of them being held accountable. And then things change. Laws will then change afterwards. The little issues that plague everybody in this industry on a daily basis, they will start to change. But I get questions all the time about O&P and this and that and all sorts of detail, which are huge issues. I love your facial expressions. It's very comical.
O&P? What does that have to do with carrier fraud?
Well, like just denying O&P, like a lot of general contractors, they're like, I have 1,000 trades on this, like, and they denied O&P. It's the littlest things to the biggest things, which is all an issue.
Okay.
But our thought process is to set the precedence at the top, and everything will change from that point forward.
I'll tell you what I think would make a difference.
Okay.
Something that I'm involved in Georgia quite a bit. I'm the president of GAPIA currently, and in Georgia, we're working things out with the commissioner's office to try to find some ways to improve the state. Some of the stuff that I think that could be a huge benefit, and it might actually bypass some of the issues that you guys are seeing a lot of, is making it more difficult for a carrier to use just any third-party organization. And maybe that third party needs to be licensed. There was a bill that was presented to Louisiana in its original format was going to make it illegal to have any third-party representative on site that wasn't a licensed adjuster. And that would have meant engineers. They would have had to have been licensed adjusters as well. It didn't end up passing in that original format, but it was an interesting concept, and it definitely brought the conversation up that maybe having these third-party organizations, the TPA firms and things along those lines, it's providing the carriers the opportunity to hide behind their third-party smokescreen, I'll call it. I think that if there's ways that we can help lobby for better laws, if we start lobbying for laws that eliminate the lack of licenses on site from whoever is representing the carrier, I think that we could help out tremendously. I think it would help anyway. Definitely wouldn't go away immediately. Blake Grissom.
So just to kind of tail end off of that comment and feedback, which, I agree and I get wholeheartedly, but there's been so many cases that myself and others that have monitored trying to change laws in many different states, and to kind of dig into that deeper, it takes so much time and energy and effort and resources to actually effectively change in that realm. And so we get that kind of feedback all the time. But we're on a cusp of a lot of really awesome stuff in the APA that's going to speak louder than words. And so let's kind of readdress that question in about 6 to 8 months.
Feel like you want to tell us more.
Well, it's exciting. I get to see a piece of this organization from the back end. I started donating my time as a board advisor. I worked for free and just volunteered with the APA the first 30 months or so. And then when I got on the inside, I was like, wow, this is, when you see such a profound overreach and imbalance, it invoked a passion in me that I was just like, I'll pick up my sword. Like, I'm ready to fight, it's when you see policyholders, especially like in Hurricane Ida or Sandy, or me and my husband worked Harvey, like, to see them suffer on such a profound level and lose so much and see the negative impact that it has on not just them, but their children, their savings accounts, their life as they know it, and all the implications that people don't see after the storm is gone. It's the storm after the storm, the mental illness, the suicidal thoughts and tendencies, chemical dependency. A lot of kids don't get to go to college because mom and dad had to use their college fund to put a roof back on the house or rebuild their home that their insurance carrier did not hold up their end of the bargain for. It's injustice on such a grand scale. And so anyways, I got off on a tangent, but that's why it's encouraging to me to see what they've accomplished in the first 3 years and what we're about to start really pulling out of our pockets. So
I love the APA. Yeah, obviously I'm a member, but
yeah,
you guys are fighting bullshit, and I love that.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, just attack the bullshit. Right,
exactly.
Because I'm going to come back to you, Blake. I promise I'm going to get to your question. I popped it up there. There is a butterfly effect that happens, and you're bringing up some good examples of how that could occur. Families can be completely devastated, and the carriers, they don't care.
Nope.
Stewart, the bean counter, doesn't care.
With his green,
that clear green visor, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes,
oh yeah,
that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And his weird calculator with a.
Yes.
He does not care. He's like a honey badger.
Yes, carriers definitely train or trade information. They have everything down to a science. They have reports on time links, and like you spoke about earlier with Stuart, like he knows the percentage of people that are going to walk away once that claim is originally denied. They have it down to a science. So what we're doing,
so much data, they could prove anything. I mean, all 100%. If they do, if they save $1 per claim, they still save quite a bit. So why not cut out the O&P and let people fight for it? And they might have to give it up on 20% of them.
Yeah.
But that's 80% less than they were going to have to pay it for. Why wouldn't they do that? They're a corporation, and corporations are evil. Not all of them. Probably.
I could sit here and talk to you for a long time about that. So.
All right. I'm actually going to ask a question.
I'm going to try to stay mission focused, but yes.
Poor Blake. If an insurance company approved a roof, then forced my homeowner to sign a contract with us before they would review all of our supplements, then denied all the supplements. All supplements are standard and nothing out of the norm. He's not asking for the world. So at the end of the day, they made the homeowner sign a contract for more than they had approved. So should they be held responsible for this action? That is interesting. So it's like backwards torturous interference. Instead of getting them to cancel a contract, they're forcing them to sign a contract just so that the contractor could discuss their bid with them. I mean, the policyholder could have sent in an estimate at any time. But the policies do generally, this is a policy question, so if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of jump on this. The policies say that they will pay for the amount that is incurred or spent, depends on the policy. If they haven't incurred that cost because they haven't signed a contract with a contractor that has given an estimate that is higher, then they wouldn't owe for it. If they haven't spent that amount, depending on the policy language, then they wouldn't owe for it. It's interesting to think about it this way. I don't think the carrier has any right to force someone to sign a contract, but part of me wants to say that there was an adjuster that was trying to help out in this, and they were trying to help out by trying to get the policyholder to incur that cost or end up spending that cost so that they could end up paying it, and then probably a manager got involved and said, nope, we're not doing that. That's my thoughts on that anyway. It's an interesting conundrum. I haven't come across that situation. Anything to add, Morgan?
No, I think that's pretty spot on. It just kind of goes to show even more so the hurdles and the change of documents and hands and feedback and how things are altered. And majority of the time, the people doing the altering, you've never met, you don't know who they are. They've never been on your property. Like, they don't, maybe in most cases, don't even really work directly for the carrier. Like, it's just, there's a ton of issues.
There really is. And a lot of the stuff that they hear or see as field adjusters, that the third parties that are being hired, they hear and they see the fraud. And sometimes the insurance carrier messes up and they put it in writing in places that they don't want them to pay for claims any longer. It doesn't matter what the issue is. And every now and then when they put that in writing, organizations like the APA have something to work with, and I'm sure they would take advantage of that. And I know that I've been supplying the APA with a lot of documentation over the years. All right, Bart Knopik. He's told me how to pronounce his name before, and I can't remember. Knopik,
like
is the K silent?
It's like Eric Oberman. I don't know. I'm always like, whatever.
Most people call him Erico.
Yeah.
Do you support to have a lobbyist? And what are they wanting to change that you support? Like you personally, Morgan, what do you support?
Oh, me personally?
Oh, yeah.
I support justice. I'm serious. Like that, like, I support fair trade. I support people getting what they're owed, no more, no less. Okay. I support world peace.
It's like you're in a
Sorry, I love that
you are not a contestant.
I love that we have this relationship that we've built over the last, probably year and a half, that we can be completely ridiculous, which you are normally. You just can't help it. But
no, I can't. I'm just weird.
Yeah.
You think it's man, I suck with names. Pronounce that for me.
Javier.
Thank you. God, I was way off. Javier de Anda.
There you go.
De Anda. As contractors and PAs, we see up close how they do this, using third parties as shields and end up manipulating reports. What type of documentation do we require as contractors and homeowners for proof of fraud? That's a great question.
What type of documentation do we require as contractors and homeowners for proof of fraud? So when that goes back to the documenting, but not just policyholders, but contractors need to be documenting everything. You're not going to be able to document something too much. You can file a report with the APA. And whenever you file a report with the APA, you will submit all documentation. You will actually answer a few questions. You will submit all documentation, and then it'll go straight to our legal team that will handle it after that. So there's not a one specific type of document. It's at all. We want it all. We want all the proof. Even if you do have have proof as a policyholder or contractor that can even hurt the case, you actually have to submit that as well. I've learned about that recently. It's called Brady Evidence, and in State Farm, it was a huge lawsuit, and they drug it out for years, and it was actually proved that they had something called Brady Evidence, exculpatory evidence that they withheld. They withheld it for years and drug it out, and it was found that they had evidence in their possession that they suppressed that very much proved that the contractor was not in the wrong and that he was.
Forgive me. Exculpatory evidence. There's a better term for it. Brady evidence. I'd never heard Brady evidence before.
It was the Brady versus Maryland. That's when it happened. So
okay.
It's called Brady Evidence. It's whenever anybody, either the corporation, either part in the suit, if you're withholding any documentation or any evidence that could benefit the other rather than yourself, that's what it's called. So that case was overturned and the contractor won, but all evidence. So what kind of documentation do we require as contractors and homeowners for proof of fraud? You need to be documenting everything as best to your capability.
Well, let me ask his question in a different way. What is fraud? Is it something that has to have intent to deceive involved?
Fraud, as defined, in the way in which we are prosecuting is faking the facts. So whenever, like a example we always give. So if you get in a wreck and you're driving a Toyota and they write it up as a Hyundai or a Kia or something, that is faking the facts. So if you have a document and the original one says, like we talked about the engineering report, there was significant damage found. And then it was edited later in peer review and it was not significant damage found. So that is fraud. They are faking factual evidence.
Well, let me ask you this then, because I have a feeling that level of fraud doesn't happen that often. But what does happen, and I have plenty of conversation with engineers that, give me information they probably shouldn't. They're asked not to use specific languages. They're asked to use very specific terminology that they wouldn't normally use themselves and stamp a document, but they're trying to conform to very, very strict guidelines, especially engineers from their own engineering firms. And sometimes they're asked to go back and change their own document. It's not that it's being changed without them, they're being asked to change it. And the idea is if they don't change it, then they don't get paid and they probably won't get any more work. Is that fraud?
So I am not a lawyer. I do not provide legal advice in any form. So I cannot speak to that directly, but I do know that there's a fine line, and we're going to be holding trainings for this because we get this question constantly. We want to make sure that policyholders and especially contractors or anybody in this side of the tracks are educated on what to look for. But that is a huge opportunity to still file a report with the APA, and our legal team will advise after that. As soon as that report is submitted, you are able to communicate and ask questions from the professionals, which I am not, and they will be able to give you, the correct feedback and point you in the right direction. Sometimes it might surprise you, but nonetheless, submitting the report creates a behavior practice. Whenever you can prove that somebody has it's not just Joe Schmo down the street or Mr. Engineer just made a mistake one or two times in his career, that happens. We're all humans, we all make mistakes. But if you can prove that it's a pattern of behavior, like, it just helps the collective. The APA is going to morph into such an amazing resource where we're going to be able to cherry pick the bad apples and the bad actors out of the bunch and get them cut off the system.
Can you say cherry pick and bad apples at the same time? Seems like wrong fruit mixing puns.
Cherries and apples. I mean,
algorithm. Yeah, I mean,
Whatever.
okay,
It
they're both
works.
red.
I'm hungry.
I
So,
think they both come from
Fine.
trees too. Blake gave us a little bit more information about the them forcing them to sign with a contract in order to take a look at an estimate. They also asked for 2 other estimates that were higher,
Yeah.
and they still said no. I would like to say that that is a very schmuckish thing to do for an insurance carrier, and they should probably seek an appraisal situation at this point, depending on your state anyway. And then also send in to the APA all the information that led up to that point so that they can then determine if there might be some fraud involved. But even if they don't think that it's fraud, it at least establishes some data on some possible systemic issues going on.
Bingo. And that's the point of all of the data. The gold mine is in the data. They all share data behind the scenes. And they use it against, regrettably, all of us. And so the more we're able to share data and information, it's just going to be better for all of us in the long run.
Does the APA share the information with the departments of insurance or attorneys general?
If we decide to package up a case and run with it, we definitely share it with whoever. Each case is different. So I've just learned that some cases cross state lines, some stay in certain states. So every single case is completely different, and we address each case accordingly.
I just had some ideas I need to talk to you guys about after the show. All right.
They're always turning.
Yeah, they're turning. They're not very good wheels.
For all states, yes. We our first actual. I'm blank. Yes, we're in all states. What's it called? Oh my goodness, I don't know. It's in one of those states.
What's it called? Oh, that's right. Yes, that's what it's called.
Yes. To answer your question, yes.
South Carolina's a state that they force them to sign a contract. South Carolina has very basic laws. There's nothing really that unique about South Carolina's laws that would make that. It's strange. It's a strange situation. They obviously can't force someone to sign a contract, but if they don't, and for the policies in South Carolina, this is true. If they don't sign that contract, then they haven't actually incurred that cost. So it's possible. And I still like my intuition on this. I think that the field adjuster or desk adjuster, whoever was telling them they need to sign a contract, is probably just doing what they thought was best for the policyholder and didn't know that they were going to just be denied in the end. A lot of times the denials come from up higher. And most of the field staff and the people that you meet on site and the people that you're talking to regularly, because they're talking to the policyholders, they tend to have a lot more empathy. They're not the ones that are coming up with these dastardly plans to do bad things. It's coming from much higher up. And they're trying their best to work within the system that they are working within. So there's good people that work at insurance carriers. There's good people that work at insurance carriers that are committing fraud regularly. Can the individuals that are a part of that be held accountable for the fraud, or is it carrier as a whole? Do you know?
Both. The carrier can be held liable, and also individuals as well. And then I remembered my word I forgot. Chapter. Texas was the first chapter. Sorry, that was not a hard
chapter. Okay.
It was not a difficult word to remember, but it happened.
Well, it did have a whole 2 syllables, so
I mean, it was a challenge. It was a challenge.
Yeah. Blake says that guy was just pulling some bullshit. So I could be wrong.
I know there's good people out there, but in my experience as a contractor, I've seen some bad actors on a regular basis, unfortunately, that I could very much tell were there with not the appearance.
Oh, there's plenty. There's plenty. And we deal with them constantly, for sure. And there's plenty of good ones out there. And honestly, there's more good ones that we meet on site than bad ones. At least that I've dealt with. but the bad ones do exist, and the good ones are constantly complaining about what their management is requiring from them and how it's definitely not conducive to good faith dealings.
There's a lot of pressure, and they're trying to make a living. They're trying to keep their lights on and put food on the table. Like, they're just trying to do their job, making it harder for them.
It really is, and there are some of them that want to quit because of the issues, and then they feel like if they do, then they're leaving the policyholders to someone worse because they're trying their best. And it's really it's a shitty situation for someone to be in. It's rough. This is all just, it's injustice. And we all know that Morgan wants peace and justice for all mankind.
I do. I mean, I know how that comes across. So
it seems like something a blonde would say, that's all.
Yeah, okay. Par for the course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you blonde?
I mean, I don't know.
I shouldn't have said that.
I don't know.
Javier is wondering how to get a hold of you.
You can email me at Morgan at A as in Apple, P as in Paul, association.org. Or you can find me on Facebook. You can follow us on all of our social media outlets to keep up with what we're doing. We do a lot of political lobbying, attorneys general across the United States. We talk to them one-on-one, either in their state's office or in DC, educating people first and foremost. But we're all over the place. And you can go to our website, or you can reach out to me directly.
Cool. So if for the victims of Hurricane Ida, there's a few documents that they can find on the resources page of that website that may help them, or at least direct them to things once they get power back and cell phone service anyway. Mm-hmm. Once they have access to that, I think the contractors and public adjusters and anybody that is helping the policyholders, attorneys, it might be a good idea for them to start handing these documents out to the policyholders as they go along as well. So if you're a contractor or a public adjuster watching this, and I know that's the majority of my audience, go to that website. It's free to access those documents. Print them out. Hand them out. You know, be a good Samaritan here. This is good stuff for the policyholder. You can help them with this. And obviously, if you're helping them, they're going to feel like they're dealing with somebody that's got more honorable intentions, I suppose.
Absolutely.
So, well, Morgan, do you want to go beat your kids again before we go?
Oh my gosh, I was just like, are you serious? Yeah, I mean, whatever. But yes, no, these documents, and there is a commissioner that just developed a trifold about this. The first ever insurance commissioner, actually in Louisiana. Him and his office. I have the link in an email, and we'll send it to you as well. They are the first ones to develop a resource educating consumers about carrier side fraud. Carrier side fraud. And so, which is awesome. It just shows like what we're accomplishing in such a short amount of time. So we will eventually have, more public service announcements, billboards, talk shows, like just talking about this stuff, getting the word out there, and first and foremost, advocating for policyholders and consumers and for their protection and their justice and their rights.
For peace for all mankind.
Peace for all mankind, yes. So, and also I will send you the link to the information that I just got back from editing the PSA that we're going to send out to contractors. We'll probably put it on our website. And
when we go back for this recording to post online, I'll attach it to the end of this so it plays throughout if you'd like. Perfect. Maybe at the beginning so they don't have to watch my terrible show at the end of it.
Yes, or me running out trying to beat my children. So.
Right. I probably could edit that out, but I'm not going to.
Why? Maybe it creates good content.
Does it?
I don't know.
Definitely makes you look good.
This is not my wheelhouse. This is your wheelhouse.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
Well, that's obvious, but at least you're trying.
I don't think I'm even trying, but whatever.
But whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
Totally
All right.
fine.
Well, Morgan, I appreciate it. You have any last statements to make? Anything? Lasting comments? You have
No, I
one
just-
sentence.
I just think world peace. I just encourage everybody to just check us out, follow us, ask questions, stay informed, and first and foremost, educate your homeowners on the fact that carrier side fraud does definitely happen. It occurs far too often, and they need to be knowledgeable about it and know how to best prepare themselves and protect themselves to keep them from being a victim of insurance carrier fraud.
Kerr. Javier had an
Kerr.
excellent question I had to shove in here real quick.
Okay.
Do you have any Spanish documents or equivalent of these
Ooh.
PDFs? I think it's
I
a great
have.
idea.
That is an amazing question. We don't, and that's an issue. That is a huge issue. It won't be much to just take the text and translate it. So I will get our IT guy to do that like as soon as possible. I will actually email him as soon as we get off this. That's a huge issue.
You should send a copy to Javier first and have him proofread it just in case Google Translate does something weird.
Perfect. Yes, I can do that.
I feel like Javier is perfectly happy to volunteer his services there.
There we go. Perfect. And that's what we love. People that see the need and donate their time and efforts. You are so welcome, Javier.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. We will resume our normal daily broadcasting.
Which is when?
Well, it's not daily. That was stupid. Our weekly broadcasting. We usually do Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. But I've actually done two weird, out of nowhere special live editions this week. The first time I've ever done that. And we did two in a row. So you guys are special.
Yay.
Hey, tell Doug I need to talk to him.
Okay.
I have some
I
ideas.
definitely will. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Morgan. And
Thanks.
thanks, everybody, for watching. I'll see you guys next time.
Okay. Y'all have a good night.